Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, December 16th, and we are gathered for a little wisdom exchange. Last week, I spoke about this journey that I've been on and how we can make decisions and how I have been learning how to make decisions from a place of insight and wisdom. We talked about how we can trust that we're moving in the right direction or taking the right next step, even when things are challenging. And I'll speak a little bit more about that today and bring in a little bit more of the wisdom that I started bringing in last week from my teacher, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. I also brought in some wisdom last week from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And in his speaking about the kleshas, which means the causes of our suffering, he talks about how these causes of suffering all are self-reinforcing. And this is something that I've learned is when our suffering is on, when we're in it, it can be very, very hard to get out. Your assignment for this month is to be just reflecting on 2020 and the lessons you've learned. And if you feel so inspired, to share something about that with us in Nowhere Village. And I've encouraged people to express, with words, as we often do in these kinds of platforms, but also with other mediums as well. Make a piece of art and share it with us. And so that we can leave, as we step out of 2020, our expressions of what it's been for us can kind of sit out in the world and be reflected on from different perspectives. And something that we talked about last week as well is that being able to step into a different perspective is going to be necessary when we do want to break out of the self-reinforcing cycles of suffering. My teachers say that pain is a beautiful gift that wakes us up. Maharaj says, pain wakes us up and pleasure puts us to sleep. And it's important to be woken up. And I think that this year, a lot of people have had some really painful awakenings. But this ability to step out of the identity, last week I talked about how he says that avidya or false wisdom or ignorance, which is the root of all of the rest of our suffering, it comes from taking a certain perspective and then deciding that's right, that it's the only perspective. And this theme came up in the guided meditation that I led, but when I identify as over here, looking through these eyes, standing in this particular spot, and I say, this is me, it creates that sense of separateness that inevitably leads to me walking around the world in fear, thinking this world is something that I have to protect myself against, defend myself against. And so as I've been reflecting on 2020, this year where I took this great journey um, and left the area of the country I'd been living for 20 years. When I reflect on it, I see that my pain is what made me take the journey. It's what woke me up. It wasn't working for me. My life wasn't working for me. I could feel myself. I could trust the information that if I continued to go in the direction I was going, if I continued to live in the kind of isolation I was living in, if I continued um, to really be struggling for financial security in the way that I was, um, if I continued to go in that direction, things were just gonna my pain, my suffering was going to increase. Not a fun realization, but again, I could trust that there was clarity and wisdom in that. And the tricky thing again is if it's pain that wakes us up, but pain also tends to make us kind of grasp after comforts, you know? Pain can often keep us in cycles of suffering that are self reinforcing. And then how do we get out? And so while 2020 has taught me, has been full of hard lessons and challenges and a lot of energy expended in trying to change my life, it has also brought me around to I've just the deepest conviction I've had ever that the answers are right here, that the solution is right in front of us, inside of us, that the practices we've been doing and the values that we've been holding up, they work, they're real. Meditation, inquiry, and community, these are the things that have gotten me through. And really anything, that connects me back to my belonging to life, to the fact that I'm not separate from this world. And I've learned this year that having more choices doesn't mean that you are going to make a better decision. That the right decision is is often quite simple, humble, and it branches off from where we've been before. I talked last time about, these moves that I've done in my life and how I'm learning how to make this move from a different place. And, the last time that I moved via my partner's financial situation, we had buying power, right? We had this buying power and at least a lot more than I do now. Um, and just because we had more choices that we could make because of the privilege that we came into the situation with didn't mean that we ended up in a place where we were happier or healthier. And I feel a peace at this point in my life, at this point, in this year that I haven't in a really long time. I said last week, I feel like a child, right? I feel more like a child and in a good way. And when I thought that I could make any decision almost, right? I had a lot of anxiety about making decisions. And what I've been tapping into since then, this sort of inner guidance, and also this sense of every choice I make is for us. It's not just for Aaron. I'm finding that sense of flow as I have to make, kind of big decisions. So I'm going to tell you guys, I'm putting an offer on a house in Fort Worth today, right after this, with the very generous support of my family. Thanks. Very generous support of my family. It's tiny, guys. It's 650 square feet. This is the kind of buying power that we have, right? And, in a very, very humble little neighborhood, about a mile from where I am now, where my brothers and nieces live, and I'll be close to my grandparents. And if this one doesn't work, which it might not, these little tiny, very cheap places go really fast right now in this market. But then we'll find another one, and with some support from family, from my brothers who will help renovate it, because we're gonna get a fixer upper for sure. I would, for the first time in my life, have something in my name, and I still want to go explore intentional communities. I have one I want to go and live at for at least 6 months at some point, but I would like to start that adventure. Thanks, everybody. I would love to start that adventure with a place that I could be renting out here, or a place that my family could somehow be using, right? It's also just an investment property for my family. That's the way that I'm thinking about it, and we're thinking about it. Or maybe I've made it really cute, and I could flip it, and I've never had any assets before. So it's been a very, very different feeling and process, where I really don't feel, I'm not trying to find the place that expresses my personality or proves my worth or value. It's a really humble endeavor, and it's for an us. So it's been a really interesting, it's an interesting experience and an interesting process and journey that I've been on. And I have finally come to peace with the fact that my journey has been one where I had to learn the wrong paths really well. I had to get real intimate with some spaces that weren't right for me, spaces that did create internal war, that did create suffering for myself. And I would just keep going, right? But making peace with the fact that that's been my path has been really, really huge. The humblingness of it all has been really huge. Some of the suffering that's come up for me along the way has been, it's really all just from these stories that come from this idea that there's this personality of Aaron, and I want to protect that personality and promote that personality. The idea of living in Texas at all for a large portion of my life was counter to the personality I was trying to be with. Also, I think I was supposed to be where I was, right? But the only thing keeping me from being at peace right where I am here, I've realized, is really just stories that I just have to kind of recognize and let go of. I'm going to share a little wisdom from Nisargadatta. This theme of humility has been a really, really, really big one for me. And we were singing, actually thought maybe we should sing it today. Maybe we should sing it next week, but and Aaron's actually here, so it's perfect. But the "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple" song I've been thinking about again a lot this week, and how that was such a theme at the end of my retreat. I'll share this too, that, next on Monday, this coming Monday is the winter solstice. So around the summer solstice, I got 2 readings, one from a friend who's just a very gifted reader, and one from a mentor of mine, or I had a coaching session with. And she's also a shaman, and anyway, they both had images, and allies come for me, come through their readings. And one was the dandelion, the flower that is so ubiquitous, right? That is so resilient, that's everywhere, and it's so humble, right? And I had a dandelion come to me before, a few years earlier, and I remember then being like, can I have a fancier flower? I mean, I'm pretty cool, right? Do I get something specialer? But the dandelion came up again, actually from another person. It came through another channel. The dandelion and a baby sparrow coming out of its shell was another ally that came for me around the solstice. And then I ended up spending a lot of time with sparrows and robins and these very common birds all summer long that were always around my meditation space in that screened in porch. You guys remember that place? and and these allies have been making a lot of sense recently as I approach the winter solstice, realizing that so much of what was causing me suffering was trying to be specialer, trying to cultivate this unique thing. The fact is, I am already unique and special. We all are. But there was something about the way that I was moving, where I was really trying to deny the aspect of me that is common, that is all, that is everywhere. And that commonness and that everywhereness is this beautiful gift. I can trust it, right? And it's what links me to everyone else. So again, it brings me back out of that separateness into the collective. It's been so healing for me to once again belong to my own family and to be needed here. It's strange also, after being in my own reality where all the stress is mine, all the worries are mine, I am necessarily the most stressed out person in the household. It's been interesting to be here because everyone with the kids and my brother's trying to run their contracting business. Um, I am the least stressed out person in the family. Wow. And I'm sure that won't always be the case, right? But it feels really wonderful to just be a part of the whole, to be a part of something bigger. Okay. So I feel like there has been some death, right? There's been some ego death happening for me this year, and some humbling. And so that's just context for what I'm going to share from Nisargadatta now. A student asks him, he says, all I want is to be free. And Maharaj says, you must know 2 things: what you are to be free from and what keeps you bound. A little later in this section, he says, a jeweler who wants to refashion an ornament first melts it down to shapeless gold. Similarly, one must return to one's original state before a new name and form can emerge. Death is essential for renewal. And here's another little section about this attachment and freedom. He says, attachment destroys courage. The giver is always ready to give, right? The universe is always ready to give. My family was ready to give, right? The giver is always ready to give. The taker was absent. Freedom means letting go. People just do not care to let go of everything. They do not know that the finite is the price of the infinite, as death is the price of immortality. Spiritual maturity lies in the readiness to let go of everything. The giving up is the first step. But the real giving up is in realizing that there is nothing to give up, for nothing is your own. It's like deep sleep. You do not give up your bed. When you fall asleep, you just forget it. And so this, of course, connects back to the quote from last week about we come here as a child and we leave as a child. And that the struggle in between is just that struggle of allowing ourselves to let go of what we think that we need to hang on to while we fight against suffering, while we fight what ultimately actually ends up being life itself. And that when we stop kind of fighting for life and we invite in death, loss, endings, that's when we realize that it wasn't ours at all to begin with. That's when we can return to the we, the us, and find our unique, special little place in the whole, in the commonness that we share. I invite questions if you have any this morning. And thanks for your words of encouragement, guys. Definitely keep you posted. You guys tend to be the first to know what's going on with me, really. Oh, beautiful. So Sveta says, Erin, what you're saying about your life reminded me what I heard recently in my learning. Look at your life as a perfectly written novel where everything that happened was for a reason. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful way of looking at it. Yeah. And that also, Sveta, speaks to something I've been speaking about in terms of writing, creating, making art. And that process, at least for me, engaging in the creative process, and I'm an avid reader, engaging in that process is a big part of my spiritual life. I see it as a big part of my spiritual life and a big part of me understanding my place in the world and learning how to wrestle with some of this stuff and be with the truth of personality and ego, be with the truth that there is a kind of narrative to my life, but while still doing what Nisargadatta was saying last week of kind of externalization, of sort of putting the good, the bad, all of it in a place where we can be witness to it. Right? When I pick up a book and I read it, it's like, I know this isn't me because it's here. But somehow when the stories are in our minds, before we get them out, we think that they're us, right? And they are and they aren't. But for me, art making is, and storytelling and song, these are ways of being witness to our inner world. And again, as soon as I can kind of put it out here and it's not all inside of me, I also can share it with others. I can also have other people read my novel and say, me too. Wow, thanks for sharing that, right? Anything else this morning, my friends? So, again, we're going to get back to our founders check-ins. I miss them, and I think some of you do too. We're going to have a nighttime one at the end of the month to wrap up the year, a little closing circle on all of 2020. And all that info is in Nowhere Village. And meanwhile, I look forward to hearing your stories. In January, just a reminder, we'll be doing a 21-day meditation challenge from January 4th to the 24th. I keep calling it a challenge. I kind of don't like that word. It feels a little combative. Commitment, I don't know, 21 days where we're going to try to each sit every day. You can join for that. Oh, Sveta says, I totally agree. Art and the senses in general are the path to the soul. Beautiful. Yeah, so that's what's all coming up. We are going to meet next week on Wednesday, the 23rd, a little before Christmas. And yeah, we're in it. There will be some other little changes coming in 2021, but we don't have to worry about them quite yet. The solstice is this coming Monday, and we'll be doing, a little solsticeness here in Nowhere Village. But I also encourage all of you to just honor this moment, right, of dark, right, of quiet going inward, and the closure that the solstice brings. Good. I'm glad it resonated today, Aaron. Thank you for being here. Thanks, everybody.